Coffee with the Coastie is brought to you by On the Coast Publications, the publishing house for On the Coast families and On the Coast over 55 community magazines on the central coast of New South Wales. Welcome to Coffee with the Coastie. Today we are excited to be chatting with Kate Perkins. Kate has worn many hats throughout her life, from elite athlete to mustering cattle on horseback, and is now a passionate practitioner in cancer rehabilitation. So it is an absolute pleasure to get to sit down and chat with Kate today about her inspirational journey and her passion to help and inspire others. Welcome, Kate.
Thanks for having me. That's quite an introduction.
It's quite the journey. It's quite the journey when you learn all about Kate's life.
It is. I've had people go, "How old are you?"
Yeah.
Because I've done so much.
I won't ask that question. It's dangerous.
84 and a half.
That's right. You look so good for your age.
Thanks.
Hey, Kate, from what I understand, you used to live in Queensland. So what was it that brought you to the Central Coast?
I have journeyed all around the world and done a lot of things between Queensland and the Central Coast. I grew up in Queensland. I did the majority of my growing up in Yeppoon.
Where's Yeppoon?
Next to your knife and fork.
That's not the first time you've said that.
No. So that's actually Central Queensland. So I've gone from Central Queensland to the Central Coast. So Central Queensland means it's the Capricorn Coast. Mm-hmm. So the Tropic of Capricorn. It's just north of Rockhampton. Sits right on the coast, and off the coast is Great Keppel Island.
Right.
So
it's far north, really.
Yeah. My dad was, we were transferred from Brisbane to Yeppoon in 1982. Dad was in the water police. So that's where we did from grade 3 to when I finished grade 12. And we had a pretty good upbringing there. Literally, there's a place called Farnborough, which was 10 k's out of Yeppoon. That's where we lived, and that was bush. So, and not that far from the beach. So we used to ride our horses through the bush and come out onto the beach, and used to ride our horses up and down the deserted beaches. We used to spend a lot of time on Great Keppel Island in our school holidays, because that's where Dad would be. And I left there in grade 12. So 17, went to, I was an exchange student to Japan. So I was selected as a Rotary exchange student, full scholarship, coming out of country Queensland, and did a full 12 months in Japan. And
how is the Japanese? Can you still? I'd assume you could speak Japanese after being there 12 months.
Yeah, I was fluent. Fluent when I came back from there, and I could read, I could write. I had difficulty coming back from Japan, even speaking on the phone in English. Like if I was speaking on the phone, it would come out half English, half Japanese.
Wow.
So I came back and moved to the Gold Coast and went to uni on the Gold Coast. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to go to uni. I just did it because Mum and Dad said you need to go and get a university degree. So I came back and I'd applied for Bachelor of Arts and in Japanese. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I came back and I was fluent in Japanese. So I started first year the degree in first year, and I jumped straight into finish the language in third year level. And then I just did electives here and there. I did sports science, I did sports management, and just made up the degree in bits and pieces. So that was my first degree. But really, my country side of things, I wanted to go and do agricultural studies at Gatton. And Mum, I don't know, Mum was a huge influence. She's like, no. Go and be fluent in Japanese. So yeah, that's what I did.
It's a bit random. But then and then from the Gold Coast you ended up on the Central Coast?
No, there was a lot in between.
Well, I'm sure there was plenty in between. I'm sure there's plenty in between. Okay,
Yeah.
so how long have you been on the Central Coast for?
10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
So in a roundabout way between, when I finished my first degree and what I'm doing now, there was a lot of travelling in between, overseas to, Canada and Europe and everywhere. And I came back from that and I did another surf trip to Hawaii. It was back in 1999. And I thought, it's 98. What am I going to do with myself now? And we'd happened to be staying with friends, this woman, Leslie, who was a remedial massage therapist. And I thought, I could do that. So I came back from that trip and went and studied remedial massage therapy. And I did that for a huge chunk of my life. And so how I ended up in Sydney was at the end of that chunk of life where my hands wouldn't work. I've gone, okay, well, what am I going to do now? So I went back and studied occupational therapy. And it was at the end of studying that second degree in 2013, I'd met Ben, and who lived up here on the Central Coast, my partner. Yeah. And I've been here since.
There you go. So the influence of the Central Coast is Ben.
That's right. That's exactly it.
There you go. That's cool.
I wanted to be out of the city and close to the beach. Because we live at McMaster's and it's a really nice little community there and it's more my speed. I was never a city girl.
More hidden. Yeah. Hidden down there.
That's it. Yeah, when we're at home, if it's not at work, we're at the beach or at home and we stay in our bubble.
Yeah.
And it's a nice bubble.
It is. So this must have been, so I saw a picture of you in a blue and yellow cap with blue swimming costume on, competing in what looked like a surf lifesaving event. Can you share this time in your life?
Yep, so that was when I was 21.
Yeah.
I was never a nipper. I didn't do nippers growing up and I just wanted to try surf lifesaving, competing. And that was up at Surfers Paradise. And it was around the same time as Carla Gilbert was competing. I was doing board racing and the beach races and flags and that was just a great, that was on the Gold Coast,
Might come to you for some pointers. I'm currently doing my bronze and I need to do board train. I need to do all that stuff. I haven't done it yet.
Oh, so
it's fun. It's all work in progress. I've got to organise a time to do my first patrol and all that sort of stuff.
Wow. Yeah, that's great.
It's very interesting.
That's so good.
It's definitely not where I thought I would have been 3 years ago, that's for sure. It's fascinating. They talked a little bit about the journey of your life, and after learning a little bit more about your life just in researching you before coming to chat, it reminded me of a line that Steve Jobs, the Apple Computer co-founder, said about life in his famous commencement speech. He said, "You cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in the future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. With this in mind, I'd be interested to know how you mentioned before how your first university degree, a Bachelor of Arts in Japanese, relates to what you're doing now."
It's funny because I have this conversation. That is just a classic analogy because I think everything that I've done in the past has led me to this point now. And it's not so much the Japanese degree that relates to what I'm doing now. It's the Japanese, having had done the degree that got me into uni later in life to be accepted into occupational therapy. So having done that degree in the past, I didn't have to do any bridging courses. I just applied for getting into OT and I got in because I'd done that degree previously.
And breezed through it. You were like within the first year. What did you say? You got 3 years qualification in the first year because you'd already been living in Japan for a year.
That's it. Yep. So it wasn't cheating, but it was.
It felt like it.
Felt like it.
It's like, these people don't even know Japanese. Been living there for a year.
That's right. It was good. And I remember the third year degree students were looking at me going, "Who are you?
Yeah.
Young upstart."
So I actually left the country and went and lived in Japan, where everyone else is on the back foot, still speaking English at home, still like don't have that problem you're talking about where you're picking up a phone and going, oh, which language do I speak
Yeah,
in? They know what they're
right.
speaking in English
Yeah.
and they're trying to learn Japanese, it's the other way around.
Yep.
There isn't another moment that you've mentioned to me about a trip you mentioned obviously, about a trip to the North Shore of Oahu in 1998 that kicked off your path to which you have travelled career-wise. Can you share how a trip to Hawaii helped you be where you are today?
So I mentioned before where met it was friends of the fellow I was going out with at the time who we stayed with, Leslie, and she was a remedial massage therapist. And because I got to a point, there was a point on that trip where I was sitting on the beach thinking, where am I going now? What am I doing?
What were you doing before you went to Hawaii?
I'd been travelling for a couple of years overseas.
Oh, right.
Doing.
And do you mind if I ask how old roughly were you there then?
When I was in Hawaii?
When
I first started travelling?
In Hawaii.
I was 25.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I first started travelling after the first uni degree. I was 22, 23.
Yeah. So you spent your early 20s travelling, really?
Yeah. I was sitting there thinking, what am I going to do now? I'm like, I could be a remedial massage therapist. And so, that's how that came about. So it was chance meeting. And so that thing about joining the dots when you look back, absolutely. That was a pivotal moment that when I'm looking back now going to helping me what I do today as a remedial massage therapist. So I went back from that trip. That was 99 when I got back from that, and immediately signed up as a remedial massage therapist study, and I did it. And then a year after that, I'd moved from the Gold Coast to Brisbane and worked for the physios who supported the Broncos. And then I did a bit of work with the Broncos at that time, set up my own clinic and started my own business as a remedial massage therapist, and that flourished and went really, really well.
So there's definitely been something in you wanting to be independent. There's a very independent sort of like the jobs you want to take on are something that you can go and create and put your own stamp on and be independent in that way.
Absolutely. Because I've got a lot of ideas going on in my head, and one of the things I've always done is backed myself.
Yeah.
And have confidence in my skill and my knowledge and run with it. And it's worked out.
It has. It has. Can you talk about one or two other places or events that have occurred in your life that looking back now align with where you are today?
So with what I do as a cancer rehab and lymphedema therapist, it was one of my very first clinical placements that I did at Greenwich Hospital, and it was just a day with another lymphedema OT, which I'd never even considered. And that lady, she was working with a woman who'd had breast cancer, had the cancer treatment, had developed breast cancer-related lymphedema, and the OT at the time, who was lymphedema OT, she was demonstrating what to do with the massage, which
from a remedial massage type.
No, from a lymphedema massage perspective, which was very different back then. 10 years ago, it was just a really light touch.
Yeah.
And the reason I decided to go back to uni was because my hands had broken down from the number of years that I'd been a remedial massage therapist. So I went back to uni to do something else to preserve my hands. Yeah. And I thought, this is something I could do. It's a really easy touch, and it's still using my hands and the skills that I've used in the past. And so that was a pivotal moment as well. And that was in the first year of uni. So I always had that in the back of my mind as I was going through that degree, because I wasn't interested in pediatrics. I wasn't interested in aged care OT or doing home modifications or shower assessments. So there had to be something else that I'd be good at or interested in.
Yeah.
Because as occupational therapists, there's so many different areas of practice that we can specialise in. Brain injury rehab, stroke rehab, spinal rehab. So it wasn't an obvious pathway in oncology.
The other ones that you mentioned are probably the more obvious ones.
They're the obvious
routes
ones
that people take.
Yeah. And they're the ones that are presented to us in the degree as well.
Yeah. Is lymphatics not even presented?
No.
Yeah.
No, I just recently went back to Sydney Uni a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
To speak with the Masters OT students to give them an idea of what you can do, and it's a possibility. And they're only just starting a unit in cancer care.
Yeah.
But looking at it from an entirely different perspective. So the way I operate is unusual for an OT to be extremely hands-on, but I'm just taking my skills that I used as a remedial massage therapist, because I do a lot of scar tissue work and tissue mobilization and using my hands.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. And I love doing it. I love the fact that I've, from that time sitting on the beach on the North Shore, wondering what I'm going to do, and here it comes, and it's brought me all the way to here.
10 years later.
Yeah, that's right.
Out of all that you've done, what do you feel has been your greatest achievement?
First of all, I think my greatest achievement was actually starting a family.
Yep.
Because in all of that, I was a late starter in that department because of all the travelling and all of the things. Yeah. I know, it's been really busy.
Yeah.
Because I also felt that I wanted to achieve something great before I had a family.
Yeah.
So my kids could have something to look up to. But it wasn't until Ben and I had Nat. He was 18 months when I started this business from scratch in 2017. And I think, starting the family at that point and then just building the practice, and it's, happened all together at the same time. So that's,
special.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And, it's been a lot of hard work, but I think this practice has been my greatest achievement other than family.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's a wonderful space. We're here now. So you've shared with me some of the goals you've set in life, and we've spoken about some of them. Everything from, you mentioned getting into vet science, but you didn't mention, which I know, is to prove your grandmother wrong. We could probably go to that.
Yeah.
To having a family and surfing together with Nat, your son, who's only 7. You've also competed as an elite competitive cyclist, which we could probably go into as well. But what is it that drives you, both in the past and now, to be so goal-driven and competitive?
Probably started just, my brother and I were always competitive. We were competitive with everything we did. We were only 18 months apart, so I'm the younger sibling, and I guess I was always trying to beat him. And I would, I was his shadow. We used to play tennis together, which was always really volatile because we always wanted to beat each other. I remember, throwing a racket over the net at him. And then,
so there's a temper as well.
Yeah. So, we used to bait each other as well. But we used to play competitive tennis, and then he decided to swap from tennis to golf. I thought, I could do golf. So I swapped, and we played golf.
Yeah.
And we played golf as juniors. So I started golf when I was 12. We used to play junior golf on a Saturday and played that all the way up to till we finished school. And that was highly competitive. I've only beaten him once in my whole life. That was an exceptional round of golf, I have to say. That'll never happen again. So, there's always been a competitive element to my life, but I have competitions in my head.
With yourself?
With myself.
Yeah.
And that's how I push myself. Like, even when I was, training for cross country, I'd be training against myself in my head, setting myself little goals and how fast I can get to that point.
Yeah.
Or pretending I'm in a race. So it hasn't stopped. So whether it's something that I'm trying to prove to myself,
yeah,
that I can achieve something great, but then I've got a lot of ideas, a lot of things that I want to do and create them and make them happen. So I think that's where the drive comes from. And
from early on, from competing with your brother.
From competing with my brother.
Competition's normal in your mind.
Yeah.
Like competing is normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than, I think, because I can say, like, I'm 18 months from older than my brother, and he's overtaken me in many things. He beat me at golf. He's you know, water skiing, whatever, like so. I was not the competitive one. He was.
Okay. I think it must be a younger sibling thing.
He still is.
Because I could say that I'm better than my brother at surfing and snowboarding.
Yeah, yeah.
But he hasn't spent the same amount of time on a surfboard that I have.
He wasn't riding horseback along the beach back when you were younger?
No, because he was allergic to horses.
All right.
Yeah, we found that out when we were having, fisticuffs, argument and wrestling, that I'd just finished riding my horse, and the horse dust must have got in his eyes, and we found out then that he was completely allergic to horses. Yeah, so...
So did he ride a trail bike along the beach then instead, or no?
No, he just didn't.
Didn't have the interest.
Yeah. So, yeah, I had the horses.
Yeah. As I understand it, it was through a desire, as you've said you're quite competitive and have goal-driven, but through a desire to create something meaningful in your life and to inspire your son that Lymphatic Solutions was born to help others. Who is it that has inspired you to do what you do, and how have they inspired you? You mentioned your mum before, actually.
Yeah, she's a quietly driven person. But she always said to me, I'm not as brave as you as to, get out and do the things that you've done. But she was a nurse. But going back before that, I was born in Darwin. My brother was born in Katherine, in the Northern Territory. We ended up living in Maningrida, which was a settlement up at the top of Arnhem Land. Dad was in the police force in the Northern Territory. So completely isolated and away from family. So back then, Mum was in her early 20s with 2 young children in the middle of nowhere in a settlement up in Maningrida. And the only way you can get in and out of there was by seaplane or by barge that came every 3 months. So, she's a massive inspiration. She's a quietly determined, very strong lady. And, that's pretty inspiring to... Yeah. It was, quite a different environment coming from Brisbane when she was nursing. But, yeah, she always encouraged me to do what I needed to do, but always a little bit cautious in, do you think that, you're a bit brave in doing that, or do you think that's the right thing? It's like... Yeah.
Is there anybody else along that? Because it's quite different environments you've put yourself in throughout life. Is there anyone else that's actually, you've come across that's inspired you to...
my aunt, she died of a brain tumour when she was in her early 50s. She lived in the States, and I guess, and she was a really amazing woman as well. So there's been some pretty amazing women in our family who are pretty strong. But my dad was always there to encourage me and support me with whatever I wanted to do. So yeah, there's been strong women in the family that...
It's family.
Yeah.
That's been the rock.
Yeah, but I just, if I want to do something, I'll go and do it.
Yeah. No, but not everybody has that drive, Kate.
No,
so it's always interesting to hear where someone gets that from. That's right, exactly. You just said it feels normal.
Feels normal.
But that's not necessarily the case, I can tell you. I wasn't born with the drive that you have, that's for sure.
And I think...
So I always find it very interesting when I speak to someone like yourself that's just looks naturally driven, is like, Walk in and you're on.
But then, not that there hasn't been hardships in the past, which that's also, I've been married and divorced. I was divorced by the time I was 30. And, that has always driven me not to be dependent on anybody. So it's my drive for independence, to make something for myself and then, make that for my family, to not have to rely on anybody as well. So, that's a driving force as well.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so, but the funny thing is with the competitiveness, I reckon it's in the blood because Nat is highly competitive and he's an only child. So everything for him's a competition as well.
That'd be interesting watching that unfold in front of you.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's amusing. Even playing Spotto in the car. He's like, I said Spotto first. So yeah, he's got the competitive drive too.
Yeah. I've seen some pictures of you surfing and one had the comment on it, my happy place when not working has always been in the surf. We'll mention age here. I don't know how long ago it was you took it. My 47-year-old back doesn't love me for it though. Staying mobile and as flexible as I can be is so important and motivation to enable me to keep doing what I love. So how do you stay as mobile, flexible and as fit as you are?
Just keep moving. But I have chiro adjustments every 3 weeks because it's my biomechanics from all the sports that I've done and I get really locked up and I need to maintain my own health and mobility. But just keep moving. I love surfing big waves. I feel like I'm still in my 20s, but I turned 50 this year.
Oh, there you go.
I don't feel it. But I still have to do my stretches and get adjusted to be able to stay in the game.
Yeah.
Because if I neglect that, I get the old sporting injuries coming back. But yeah, I feel amazing. And I love paddling out in big surf still. And I love catching big waves. But being out in the surf means I'm not thinking about work. Because it does, my day-to-day, Monday to Friday, is I'm immersed in the business. It's hard not to be. And by going for a surf, now with Nat in the surf, Ben, Nat and I, we're in the surf together, which is amazing.
The goal we were talking
That was
about.
Life goals,
Yeah,
to have a family and all surf together.
Yeah.
And now that's ticked. And I just love watching Nat in the surf. And
what age did he start surfing?
I reckon we had him on a board when he was 4.
Wow.
He could paddle before he could start swimming.
Yeah.
And he sort of taught himself how to swim in the Max Beach pool. He hated going swimming lessons. Yeah, now he's out the back, paddling his own waves, paddling onto his own waves, catching his own waves. And he's even catching, pretty big waves for a 7-year-old.
And so do you do anything outside of surfing and chiro for your own?
I go to the gym.
Yeah.
I was on the bike. I haven't ridden a bike for a really long time.
Because you competed on a bike.
Yeah.
For years.
Yeah. So that was back in early 2000s.
Yeah.
Up to 2005, where I was on the bike 7 days a week. And then there was a moment where I thought, I know it was Easter 2005, where I decided I didn't want to be on the bike anymore. I wanted to go surfing.
So you weren't surfing as much back then?
No.
No?
No, because there was cycling.
Yeah.
And racing. But yeah, I wanted to get back to surfing. It coincided with the divorce, where I was like, oh, that's over. Oh, I feel like going surfing now.
Clear the mind.
Yeah. And, it's like that never even happened. But most recently, dancing is what keeps me moving again.
Yeah,
so,
I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Yeah. But yeah, surfing's the main thing. Getting up early in the morning and going for an early paddle out before anybody else.
Well, we discussed that before we started talking. Your sleeping routine, I'm like, how do you survive? I can do that every now and then, but
yeah, it's just a
5 to 6 hours sleep.
Wake up.
After a while, I feel tired. As you mentioned with exercise and stuff, you obviously have a very strong belief system around exercise, which in turn you're able to form good, healthy habits for yourself. Though for someone who doesn't already have the same belief system around the importance of exercise, how would you recommend helping them adjust their beliefs to help them form a consistent habit around exercise? As I think many people can associate exercise with being a challenging task that drains energy and wears them down, rather than increasing endurance and building them up.
Start low and progress slow. So just not diving straight into, not thinking that or believing that exercise you have to go 100 miles an hour straight away, because I reckon that's a barrier to many people. If they haven't exercised before, it's going to be a barrier for them to dive into exercise. So I work with women who have been diagnosed with breast cancer, and I work with them all the way through their treatment, and even worked with women who haven't had exercise in their life, and even starting with them through their chemotherapy. And in the end, by the time they have finished their chemo and gone through, had their surgery and come out the other side, they're stronger than when they started. And then they've maintained this exercise. And where I start from is starting with breathing techniques, because which have a number of different benefits. But one of those benefits is increasing the oxygen to the brain. So automatically they feel a bit more energized.
Yeah.
And then from there, if you're a bit more energized, then you might feel like doing some stretches, which are, still gentle, but still sending more oxygen to the muscles. And then from that point, you might feel like you're a bit stronger and you've got more energy, and you might feel like doing some weights or going for a walk. So starting gently that way, and maybe a couple of times a week, and then you start feeling really good. And then your eating habits might change, because when you start eating really well, then your body starts to feel amazing. You start to feel like you've got more energy. And it's guiding them into feeling good. It's about how you feel, and then how you look, and then you've got more energy. It's like, how could you not want to feel like that?
Reframe that belief system after a while.
Yeah, because I remember when I used to, when I was cycling, and my diet was almost down to a bit of a science, and you're eating really fresh, raw foods. If I had something like hot chips or something that was really greasy, I literally felt sick.
Yeah.
Having a really healthy diet certainly helps that, energy levels, and you want to feel like that.
That's how you survive on 5 hours sleep.
Yeah.
High energy food intake.
Oh, I wouldn't say my diet is as good as that these days.
Yeah.
Not even close. Yeah, I guess I run on really high energy stores.
Yeah. Did you always, think of it back, mustering cattle, we always have an awareness of health and diet and that sort of stuff?
Probably not. That was completely different. That was so how I got to working on cattle properties was where I proved my my grandmother wrong. By getting into vet science. And then part of that, preparation of getting into vet science, they recommended, go on work on a cattle property. And I'd met these people on one of my travels who'd had a big property out at this place called Mitchell, which is west of Roma, Western Queensland. And we exchanged numbers, and I ended up getting in contact with them. I said, can I come and do some time on the property? I said, yeah, sure. I'd go out there for a couple of weeks at a time. And the days of that you would spend out mustering, so their properties were massive. And so you'd be up at 4 o'clock in the morning. But the day before that, the afternoon before that, there was a couple of lambs that they had slaughtered for meat, and meant they would eat everything, like the brains and the heart and the eyes and the liver and kidneys. That was for breakfast. The next day. So you're having lamb chops and liver before heading out on a big day of mustering.
Yeah.
And so that's where you get your energy levels from.
Yeah.
And there'd be a lot of meat.
High protein, meat
protein.
intake.
Yeah. And so you'd be eating that at 4 o'clock in the morning to get the horses on the truck to head out to the middle of nowhere on their property and get the horses off and do the mustering.
You said you used to go out 2 weeks at a time. How often? How long were you doing that for though? Like over what period? Like a year or two? Or?
Yeah, over a 12-month period.
Yeah.
So there was another property out at Tambo that I went out.
Yeah.
And that's further out western Queensland on an even bigger property.
Must feel very isolated out there, like when.
I loved it.
Yeah.
See, I am a country girl that got to live on the coast, but I do love that country element. Now I can't live too far away from the coast, but that was an amazing experience of working on those properties.
Yeah.
And seeing how their kids grow up. Like their kids, you know, the people that I used to go and stay with, they were driving trucks at, you know, the Land Cruisers at 10 years old on the property.
Yeah. That's right.
And, you know, shooting kangaroos.
They were 3.5 and they were out driving Land Cruisers. Yeah.
I know, it's amazing. Those kids out there are so resilient.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I've done a lot.
Yeah. So I've looked and online you've obviously got, if I get it wrong, you can correct me, bounce back from cancer.
Bounce back from breast cancer.
Bounce back from breast cancer. And so you display a lot of different exercises online and things like that. So there are a lot of different exercises that I've seen online that you do. Are there 2 or 3 that you have found to be most beneficial? And if so, which ones and what it is about them that makes them more beneficial than others?
One of the really simple exercises. So the program that I developed is a 3-stage exercise rehab program for women going through breast cancer or have recovered or even a couple of years down the track, want to get back into exercise. And that program is called the Foundation Program. And the reason I called it Foundation Program was bringing the movements back to basics. So having that foundation of basic movement patterns so you can exercise safely from a place of strength. One of those exercises in particular that I love, and I show everybody this exercise, is it's called the pinky slide. The pinky slide up the wall, but it's not as simple as that. It's engaging the rhomboids, which are the muscles in between the shoulder blades. And when you engage those muscles ever so slightly, you feel your shoulders and your chest open up. The rest of your shoulder stability muscles engage. And so when you do the pinky slide up the wall from that movement where your shoulder blade muscles have engaged, you feel so strong. And your shoulders increase in stability. So it's not just an arm movement, you know, moving your arm up and down. You're stabilising through the shoulders. And what happens when you do that when you're standing, automatically you feel like you're 2 inches taller and you feel energised and you feel strong and your shoulders are opened up. So that is one of my very favourite exercises because it's starting from that. It's like retraining the brain into switching on those muscles to feel stronger, and you're moving from a stronger place. And so if you do that and you set yourself up correctly before you go into doing any of your strength resistance training, then you're going to reduce the likelihood of injury. My other favourite exercise, it's a stretch. It's called the corkscrew stretch.
The corkscrew?
Corkscrew.
Yeah.
It's like you're laying down on your back, you've got your knees bent, and you've got your left arm out to the side, and then you're taking your knees across to the right side. So you're actually wringing your body out. Yeah. And you stay in the stretch. So I tell people not to bother counting to 10 and waiting for the stretch to finish. Actually be in the stretch.
Yeah, interesting.
And allow your muscles to stretch. And you can feel it. You can feel them release. And then you know when that happens because your body wants to take that bigger extra breath in of air, and then you let it out and you relax. And then you move on to the next movement. And it's also like a mindfulness activity. If you're concentrating on that, you're not worrying about what's for dinner or the stresses or the worries that you might have going through cancer treatments, allowing yourself to think about what you're doing in that moment.
Potentially some of those, like even your pinky one, because it's not a high, it's actually a concentration movement rather than, so you can be in the movement.
Yep. Yeah, and so it's using the basis of that movement and take that into the other exercises that are on the program, like as simple as doing bicep curls, setting yourself up nice and strong, set yourself up through the shoulders so you're feeling strong, and then go ahead and do your bicep curls.
Yeah,
and your squats,
makes sense.
And that sort of stuff. So it's really basic, but really effective. A lot of the exercises that I've got in that program are a lot of the weights and exercises that I have always done right from when I started doing weights back in high school. And they're good classics.
Well, that's what you find. It's all the simple stuff.
Yeah.
That you just need to do it.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. It's easy.
Yeah. We spoke before we started recording, and I know just from being around you, you use MLS laser therapy as part of your treatment. I've read the MLS, like I've searched, I thought, let me research the MLS laser therapy website. And it mentions things like neck and back pain, arthritis, sports injury, etc. But then I also know, I think it's the MLS laser therapy website, that you're on it. You're like, there's an article about yourself, and it talks about, I think in Queensland, you happen to see them on a stand or something, you were at some exhibition and you happen to go, oh, they told you about it and you aligned what you do with what it's possible of doing. What is it that made you realise when reading about it that it was going to be perfect for your patients? When I read it, it's like it's something that we talked about before. It's an osteopath or something like that that would normally have that machine.
As a cancer rehab and lymphedema therapist, I was using a handheld laser, so what they call low-level laser, to help soften radiation scar tissue, surgical scar tissue, and soften harder lymphedema tissue. And the handheld laser had a diode of, 0.5 centimetre, and you'd have to have it on a point for 1 minute and then move it 2 centimetres and have it on for another minute, and do that until you've covered an area, which could take a really long time.
Yeah.
But I wasn't even thinking of that at the time. It was at the ALA, Australasian Lymphology Association symposium on the Gold Coast. And I was actually speaking with another lady, Pauline, who worked for Layla O'Toole. I did a lot of work with her, and I was chatting with her, and the stand that had the MLS laser was just opposite. And Pauline said to me, what are those things over there? Go and have a look. Go and ask about those. And I went, sure, because I was looking at them going, what are they? So I went to speak with Dr. Catherine Norton of Heal with Laser, who had the stand there at the time, and asked her about what the lasers did. And she had the non-robotic M5 MLS laser, and what that means, it has what's called a Charlie head hands-free laser diode, which has 3 laser diodes in them, so you can actually treat someone hands-free without putting your hands on them and treat a large area. It also had a handheld component, which you scan over the body. Immediately, without even Catherine explaining everything, I'm looking at the hands-free component and the handheld component thinking, I could treat 2 places at once on the body. And she ran through the biological effects so the treatment itself is called photobiomodulation therapy using an MLS laser. An MLS stands for multi-wave lock system laser. So it has a continuous and a pulsed light wavelength that works simultaneously.
And can we touch on what, because I can't even repeat the word, what is the phototherapy?
Photobiomodulation therapy.
Yeah.
It means that, so to explain that, the light wavelengths that are used are on the infrared to near infrared light spectrum. So the light wavelengths are long and slow, and they penetrate the body up to 5 centimetres subcutaneously into the tissue. So the fact that the light wavelengths are long and slow means you can't feel anything. So a surgical laser, on the other hand, uses the blue light end of the spectrum, and they're short and sharp. So that's what creates heat. So it's the photons from the light that interact with the cells to achieve a number of different biological effects. So that's why it's called photobiomodulation therapy. And so the biological effects include accelerated tissue healing. They dilate the blood vessels in the lymphatic system, so it increases circulation, increases the blood flow to an area that needs to be healed, increases lymphatic function, so that reduces swelling. And another biological effect is to reduce inflammation. So it has an anti-inflammatory property.
Yeah.
And so I'm immediately thinking, fantastic. I can treat my lymphedema patients. I can see post-surgical, so post-breast cancer, and see patients a week from post-surgery, and use the Charlie head, the hands-free component, and be able to treat people to accelerate the tissue healing process and not have to put my hands on them. Use the handheld component to treat a different part of their body. So we're tissue healing, increasing lymphatic function, softening scar tissue. So I see people who have developed radiation scar tissue, which can be quite fibrotic. So that's part of the healing process of the body after radiation. So the body lays down extra collagen fibres, scar tissue fibres, which are a lot thicker and less mobile than our normal undamaged tissue. So it's hard to move.
Is that under the surface? That's under
It's within the tissue,
Yeah.
under the subcutaneously, and using the laser, which penetrates the tissue up to 5 centimetres, it's immediately. The results are immediate. The softening is immediate, so it's really fast. And so other side effects of cancer treatment include postural changes, which might mean harder, tighter muscles. So we're using the laser to also soften muscle tissue. And so treatment is effective and fast. So in my brain at this point, at the conference, I'm thinking I can teach my assistant to use the laser while I'm seeing other patients. So then I'm increasing the number of people that I'm seeing, getting amazing outcomes.
Bigger impact.
Yeah, for patients. And so that was the first laser that I bought. And then based on research coming out of Belgium, they're using the robotic M6 laser, which they still have the Charlie head, but it's robotic. And so we're scanning areas of treatment which are accurate, and they're using the laser during radiation to prevent or reduce the likelihood of radiation dermatitis, or reducing that radiation burn superficially. But what it's also doing, it's starting to heal the tissue underneath that's been damaged from radiation. And so I've gone, that's what I've got to do. And so I've introduced it into the clinic. And I'm seeing women who have finished their radiation treatment 12 months prior, and I've used the laser during their radiation treatment, and their area that's been treated has remained soft, and their breast tissue has remained soft.
And nothing else has ever done that in the past?
No.
Yeah.
No. Well, usually I wouldn't see anyone during radiation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't touch them. But this has given me the ability to be able to see people during their treatment and reduce their adverse side effects.
And so do you still use all that little 2 centimetre? Is that's been no longer?
No, I look at that now and go,
it's in the archives.
That's well and truly in the archives.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've also now been able to broaden my patient category I get referrals from orthopaedic surgeons. to help with the healing process post orthopedic surgery for knees and hips and ankles.
So that was probably going to bring me on to the next question I was thinking about just then is, obviously this all started with breast cancer, but men, is there anybody out there doing anything with regard to men's cancer or anything?
Oh, yeah.
Or whatever?
Yeah,
And
so
is that also something you do?
Yeah.
It's
so
obviously
originally it was,
started.
I started focusing on the early intervention for breast cancer related lymphedema.
Yeah.
And then that's where it expanded into cancer rehabilitation. So when I first started my practice from scratch, I had 0 patients. And in that time, I wasn't sitting there twiddling my thumbs. I was out educating the GPs and the oncology specialists as to what I actually do. But I was also doing extra study in the cancer rehab space.
Yeah.
But I also have referrals to see people who have gone through head and neck cancer treatment.
Male or female?
Male or female.
Yeah.
Men who've had prostate cancer, who have had lymph nodes removed or radiation, melanomas. So, I see a lot of men who've had treatment for melanoma. Yeah, so it's pretty broad.
Yeah.
It's not just women who have had breast cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I love what I do, because everything is different. Everybody is different, but the results I see by doing the treatments that I do. So I use a lot of my skills from as a remedial massage therapist. It's a lot of tissue mobilization. So what the lasers do is they heal the tissue, but they soften the tissue, enabling me to help mobilize scar tissue. And then I also did a course back in 2018 on modern cupping techniques. And the reason why I did that was I was looking at someone who was recovering from having a mastectomy, and then they had radiation. And so they had come to see me a little bit down the track, and they had adhesive scar tissue. So there was no mobilization in that area of tissue that had the mastectomy. And I'm looking at it thinking, how's the best way to treat this? And rather than trying to mobilize the tissue with your hands, I thought, got to lift it up. And so I've gone cupping. And so it's not your traditional cupping technique where you see like the swimmers have got bruises all over them.
Circles everywhere.
Yeah. So modern cupping techniques mean you only take a really small amount of tissue up into a cup, and because that lifts the scar tissue fibres away from each other, and using pH neutral cream just to be able to move the cups around. And so you're literally lifting the tissue and the fibres up off an adhesive area. And so I'm using the latest in technology in combination with an Eastern traditional
cupping technique. Yeah.
So, which I think about that every now and then. I think it's pretty cool.
Almost. All you need to do now is speak Japanese while you're doing it.
That's right.
Yeah. So that brings us to your current little adventure on the side. Lastly, the very first time I met you, back in 21, you had not long danced in the Stars of the Central Coast for the first time. And I remember you said to me it was always a goal of yours to perform on stage, and that you had now achieved it. You are now returning in 2023 to the Stars of the Central Coast as an all-star. How did this come about? And was this another goal of yours that you're ticking off your list?
So, go back to the first time I did Stars of the Coast. I've done some collaboration in the past with the Cancer Council, just with education. And I saw the Stars of the Coast pop up previously on Facebook and in the news somewhere. And I'm thinking, God, I'd love to do that. And I said to Janie and Toinette, how do I get on that? It was a few months after that, and I think for the 2021 Stars of the Coast, I was a wild card. Pretty sure someone went out with an injury, and they've gone, oh, I know who to get. Let's get Kate, which was awesome because it's what I wanted to do. But I love dancing. I've never done formal dancing before, not as a kid. My girlfriend used to choreograph. She was excellent, and I used to copy what she did, and I loved it. But one of my dreams was to perform a number out of Chicago, the musical, on stage to a packed house. And when Lauren, my dance partner, said, "So we're doing a Broadway number," I'm going, "Yes." And because I hadn't told anyone this.
Oh, right. It's interesting.
No one knew about my little dream in my head. And she said, "We're going to do a number out of Chicago." I've gone, "Oh my God, are you kidding me?" So we did, it was fantastic. It was the best. So I had such an awesome experience. I wanted to do it again. And so when the All Stars came around, because this is their 10-year anniversary,
Oh, right. It's been going that long.
having this event,
Yeah.
I was like, pick me, let me do it again. And so it's come around again, and this year I'm dancing salsa with Crin from Central Coast Salsa, and it's going to be pretty good.
How's the training been going?
We were meant to start today, but I've put them off so we could do this.
Oh,
and,
thank you.
So we're starting next Tuesday. So we're going to be training Tuesday and Fridays. And I'll be going to my chiro every 3 weeks to get adjusted to make sure I can.
You haven't increased that to every second week?
Yeah, every second week. Actually, I think we are going to go to every second week to keep the hips moving. But as a part of being in the Stars of the Coast, it's, there's fundraising and raising awareness about the Cancer Council. But all the funds that are raised for the Cancer Council stay on the Central Coast. And so over those 10 years, $1.1 million has been raised by the Stars, which is pretty phenomenal.
Wow.
Funding the research and preventative programs that the Cancer Council have, and their resources and their volunteers and their phone lines and their groups that they do, and there's so much that they do. And so being part of that is just...
Especially in your environment that you're in.
Yeah.
It have a bit more of a meaning, I'd imagine.
Well, it does. But also educating the wider public as to what the Cancer Council does.
Yeah.
Most people don't know what the Cancer Council does and what support, because most people are affected by cancer either directly or indirectly through friends or family or them themselves.
I don't think there's anybody that hasn't been in some way affected.
No. And knowing that you've got support, some sort of support that the Cancer Council offers, is really good to know.
Mm.
I've even had ladies who want to do something fulfilling after they've had breast cancer, and they might be working or retired, and they go, "I just want to be able to give back or be able to provide some sort of support." I just say, head up to the office at Cancer Council. Mm. They've got a great volunteering program. Even if there's something you can do in the office, just go out there and say, "Hey, I want to be able to give back." And so that's where you start.
Yeah. There you go. Well, good luck in the All Stars.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty big.
We're hoping to be there, actually.
Yeah.
That's the plan. That's the plan.
It's going to be fantastic.
Hoping to be there to see everyone perform.
Yeah. It's always a good night.
Well, Kate, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting, and thank you for everything that you do, helping others through what is no doubt an emotional journey. If anyone would like to contact Kate, simply search Kate Perkins or go to coastalrehabhub.com.au or lymphaticsolutions.com.au. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks for having me. That was awesome.
Coffee with the Coastie is brought to you by On the Coast Publications, the publishing house for On the Coast families and On the Coast over 55 community magazines on the Central Coast of New South Wales.